friend.
Hello.
Everyone too.
Hello.
Uh,
Not working. Audio doesn't work. I have a problem with the microphone.
Why that's. Let's see.
Yes, ma'am.
Ernie, what sefer was it? May Amlo A Shmuel Bet?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Oh. Okay. A lot of good stuff.
Yes. You can order it on Amazon.
Uh-huh. Who puts
I
it out?
do.
It's not by Art Scroll, is it?
No, it's not.
Who's it by?
Let's see. Printed and bound in Jerusalem by Vakshal Limited. Oh, in America, it's Mosnaim Publishing Corporation.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Amazon, yeah.
The camera.
Well, we're almost finished with Shmuel Bet. Well, mm.
Oh,
Yeah.
Hi, Harold. Hi, Magda.
Get the.
Before.
Yeah, where are we holding here?
Chapter 13.
Chapter 13.
Yeah.
13. Okay,
Beginning
okay.
of the Perek. Yeah.
Not chapter 11, I hope.
No. Oh, no, chapter 7.
No, that's the worst. Horrible.
Hello.
Get the walk, Arnie. Get the walk.
Welcome, everybody.
Can you see who else? How do you see who's on here?
Drama continues.
Very dramatic this week.
Tonight's shiur is dedicated in the memory of the yard site. This is the second yard site of Susie's dad, Ben Lax, Dov Ben Mordechai. His neshama should have an aliyah.
I mean,
Amen.
Amen.
I just want to finish the last few psukim of Perek Yud Beis. The birth of Shlomo Melech occurred. He's called Yedidia. And Pasuk Chavav in Perek Yud Beis, Vayilachim Yoav b'Rabat Nemon. This whole episode started where the Bnei Israel are fighting in Amman, Jordan. It's called Rabat Bnei Ammon. And if you remember, David did not go to the battle. That's one of the reasons that we were given by some of the Meforshim about the Chet. He stayed home. That's why he spied Bathsheba. So we come back to the story of the battle. And it's important, these psukim give us some insight in the relationship between David and Yoav. So V'ilachem Yoav b'Rabat Me'amon v'yadkor et Yiram. This is the capital city of Ammon. Pasuk Chav Zayin v'yishlach Yoav malachim el David. Remember, this was also that David had sent messengers to the king of Ammon to console him, condolences on the death of his father. And that king treated those messengers very poorly, shaved off their beards, sent them back with tattered clothing. So that began the battle. So Vayishlach Yoav malachim David. Yoav sends messengers to David. Vayomer nilchamti b'Rabbah, gam lakarati et Yeramayim. Ve'atayas et pasuk chavches ve'atayas sovet yeter ha'am v'chanei le'ir v'lachda penal kol ani et ha'ir v'nikra shmi aleh. Yoav is concerned. He doesn't want the city to fall into his hands. He wants to give that cover to David HaMelech. Otherwise, the Nitzachon will be called Yoav's Nitzachon. And The Gemara says in Sanhedrin Kuf Zayin that Biglal Maisa Uriyat Shapirshu Sanhedrin Meshach Shisha Chadoshim David. The Sanhedrin separated from David HaMelech for 6 months. Some Meforshim say he had tsaras. This is all part of the fact that David is extruded from his normal position because of the chet. And Yoav thought in these conditions, there might be rebellion against David. Especially if Yoav wins this victory. And therefore, Yoav wants to prevent this. So he sends messengers to David. David, you come and conclude the battle against Ammon. And that's what he does. Pasuk Chavtes, Vayasov David HaKolam Vaylech Rabata, Vaylachim Ba Vayil Kedah. David gathers his forces, they go to Rabat, and he conquers it. Pasuk Lamed, Vaykachet Ateret Malka Me'al Rosho. Some say this was the crown of the Melech. Some say it was the crown that was on the top of the idol that they worshipped, Avodah Zarah.
Molech.
Umishkalaki karzav even yikara. It weighed talent of gold and it had a precious stone. Vatihi al rosh David. Meforshim say it wasn't mamish on his head. It was put like on a wall, or he would carry it and he would show it. Ushrala ir hotzei harbe meod, and a lot of booty was taken out of that city. Pasuk Lamed Aleph Veta Amasher Ba. Here's a very strange pasuk. Veta Amasher Ba Hotzi. David treats the defeated populace very severely. Vayasam b'mageira. Mageira is a saw. Uvacharitze barzel. These are threshing boards made out of iron. Umagazrezos barzel. And with axes. Vevir otam b'malbein. He dragged them through muddy streets. And he tortured them. And he sawed them. He dragged them over, and he tortured them with these metal instruments, with axes. They burnt them. Vayashav David Chol Yushalayim. This was done, the Ralbag says, Kedei sheyiru shara umos mililachem b'Yisrael, as a deterrent that the rest of the nations should stop fighting with Bnei Yisrael. This is what's going to happen. And remember, this is a Nakama. Remember the Bnei Ammon we'd reminded everybody that they had humiliated the messengers of David, and now David is taking revenge because of their evil.
Isn't this a very harsh repercussion of that? Seems very, they were embarrassed, but here, isn't this so much more serious?
Absolutely.
Can I add something? I think we've seen in the previous parakim, the repeat Mida Keneged Mida. This is David just not having vengeance for vengeance. Mida Keneged Mida, the way the Ammonites treated the Shlichim that David set out to negotiate with them initially. And I think in the next parak, you'll have multiple examples of Mida Keneged Mida in terms of what happens to David and his family.
Okay, so this concludes the parak of Ma'aseh Bat Sheva. Now parak Yud Gimel. The soap opera continues. I was telling somebody that it's Yoshua and Shoftim are very much like Game of Thrones.
Don't say that. Say that.
Why shouldn't we say that?
I don't know.
Meaning,
Lahavdil.
of course, Lahavdil. Meaning, who kings, who's going to be the next shofet, battles. here we see in Shmuel Aleph, Shmuel Beis, a lot of more interpersonal behavior in relationships between men and women, between different, we've seen now between, we saw how David courted Abigail, right? The widow, the wife of Naval, which was a little strange. And then, of course, the relationship with Bathsheba. Now we're going to see another very shocking episode, which also involves interpersonal relations.
Well, that's life. I
Hey,
mean,
can I, oh,
not everything can be beautiful in the Tanakh. That's life. It's trying to show you what life is.
I'm just pointing out that there seems to be a different focus in Shmuel Aleph and Shmuel Beis, a lot more personal living, things that happen in everyday life. So absolutely. And Barbara wanted to say something?
yes, Ernie, I wanted to ask you again, just to clarify, I just still didn't understand. It was David who gave Bathsheba to Uriah Hachiti. Did we establish that?
Yes, we did, based
We
on
did.
Uriah helping him in the
Uriah
battle.
helped David in killing Goliath.
So I
right?
think David was the one because he had wanted, because Uriah wanted a wife from Bnei Israel, and David was the one who fulfilled that. I just wanted to ascertain, establish that. Is that correct?
We saw Medrash like that, yes.
Oh, it's just a midrash. So
Not from the Psukim.
what right did he have to do that? I just didn't understand that.
What, to suggest a shidduch for Uriah?
Not suggested. I think he facilitated it. No, am I wrong?
Okay, but at that point, why Bathsheba is not, you're saying because he had a nevuah, we learned about a
No,
nevuah
I'm
that he was
that he
destined to
gave-
marry her?
That he gave Bathsheba to Uriah Hachiti.
Yeah, but that's before he married. That's
Yes, yeah. So, but why would he even do that? What gave him the right to give him a Jew, a girl from Am Yisrael to? He was not Jewish. He was.
no. So there was a machlokas.
Oh, there's a machlokas.
Yeah, regarding the provenance of Uriah Hachiti. Uriah was Jewish. He just lived in the area of
He
Chet.
was. Oh, I guess I read something else. Okay.
Yeah, we are going according to the pshat that Uriah was Jewish. He just lived in Chet. We had another person who was called like the Edomite, right? The Edomi, but he was also Jewish. He just lived in the area of Edom.
Okay. Thank you.
Ernie, I have a question on your comment about the Shmuel Aleph and Shmuel Beis being very different. Do you think that might have been because Shmuel was alive during most of the Shmuel story in Shmuel Aleph, and because of a very different personality and role as a Navi, whereas David HaMelech obviously is a gibor, a strength, a warrior, etc.
A king.
So
A
they're
king.
completely different theme with dealing with personality-wise.
Absolutely. I'm not, yeah. I mean, Yoshua wrote Sefer Yoshua, but Sefer Yoshua seems very much, they conquered this area, they conquered that. It was very geographic, very
Historic.
territorial. Shoftim had a little bit of it. Shoftim had a little bit with Yiftach and his daughter, and of course Shimshon and Delilah. So we had some of it, but it becomes very intense in the stories in Shmuel. Why it's so? What you're describing may be part of it. We'll see if we have other solutions as we continue. So what happens now in Perek Yud Gimel? I want to read what Rav Steinsaltz says as an introduction to the following few prokim. The stories related in the following section are important in the life of King David in their own right, but their significance pertains to the conclusion of the previous story, meaning the story of David and Bathsheba. So the theme of David and Bathsheba is going to hover over all of the next few prokim. David continues to reign over Israel, and the promises made to him are fulfilled. In this regard, it seems as though he has achieved atonement for his sin. That means we learned last week about all the various harsh prophecies that Nasan Navi told what was going to happen to David and his family. But in a sense, as they happen, that leads to the atonement that David needs. The harsh prophecies foretold by the prophet are fulfilled. David is afflicted by suffering that comes not from external enemies, but from within his own household and even from his own loved ones. His punishment is thus similar to his sin. David sinned in that he did not control or limit his desires. And as time goes on, he experiences within his own family the results of similar actions perpetrated by others, which lead to human tragedy and bloodshed. So I think that's a very nice introduction to the what we're going to, not just in this parak, but in the next few parakim. It puts it into context. These are not just random stories that appear here. There's a connection, and that's very important for us.
It
So,
still
like-
doesn't diminish, but it still doesn't diminish the I don't what to call it, the aura, the ambience here in terms of people who are satisfying their personal lust, whatever. It's very painful. I think it's
Yes.
very painful.
Yes. So let's see what happens in this parak. Vayach rechein. Ulav Shalom ben David. One of the sons of David is Avshalom. Achot Yafa Ushma Tamar. Avshalom has a sister, a beautiful sister. Her name is Tamar. However, you notice it calls her Achos Avshalom. It doesn't say that Tamar is Bas David, right? It defines her as the sister of Avshalom. Vayaveh Amnon ben David. David has another son from another mother, Amnon.
Now I lost it. Where are we?
So the Abarbanel also says, Achrei shesiper katuv chatat David binyan bat Shava, Zachar acharav ha'onshim asher anisho akel yisbarach alav. The Tanakh describes the punishments that occurred to David. Reishis b'misas hayeled. Number one, the death of the child that Bathsheba was carrying, we discussed last week. Shenit, bi'inyan Tamar, sheshachav Amnon ima vayaneh. This parak, we're going to learn about the rape of Tamar by Amnon. Gemul, sort of a repayment. Mashashachav David in Bathsheba b'chaye baila. That David had relations with Bathsheba even while her husband was alive. Gimel, Shlishis, Baharigat, Amnon, Shahargo Avshalom. As a result of the rape of his sister, Avshalom is going to kill Amnon. Alotabila Surah, Gmul mitat Uriah Shemito David Bavur Ishto. This is Abarbanel. Achrei zeh, Yisaper inyan Avshalom im David asher nitchabru bo, gam ken giluy arayo sheshachav neshei aviv leinei kol Yisrael. Part of the rebellion of Avshalom against David, Avshalom is going to sleep with Pilagshe David. Kamoshi had Nasan Navi. Nasan predicted this. And then Ushvichas Damim b'misas Avshalom atzmo. Eventually, Avshalom is going to be killed, and Nasan predicted that as well. V'cherfas David v'gidufo b'yosu borech b'nei b'no asher kamalav. David is going to be chased by his son Avshalom. This is the connection between the next few prakim and the parak we just left. Now, Rashi says, Ulav Shalom Achos Yafa, Shaisa Bas Imo. this was a sister to Avshalom because they shared the same mother, not the same father. So
David wasn't,
now
Avshalom
there's going to
wasn't
be a
dead.
debate between the Rishonim. That one opinion was that Avshalom, that the relationships that she's both an achos min ha'av umina em. That Tamar was a sister to Avshalom both because of David and the mother. Who was the mother of Avshalom? Ki Macha bas Melech Kishur Haisa. Macha was a princess, the daughter of Melech Geshur.
Oh my,
Melech Geshur was one of the cities that David conquered. Now, one of the rules of Jewish warfare is you could take a Yefas Toa. You found a beautiful woman, you could take her in marriage. Says the Radak, V'lacha David b'milchama, uvo alea kodem shenizgaira, v'nis abra v'yaldas Tamar. So in Parshas Kiseitse, where we learn the story of the Yefas Toar, Kiseitse milchama loivecha, and you see a woman. So there's a process. You're supposed to let her hair grow long and her nails get ugly, and then after 30 days, if you want, you can marry her. However, you can also have relations with her once before you marry her. So here it says, Lacha David b'milchama uvo alea kodem shenizgaira. So he had lived with her before she converted, and then became pregnant. V'yaldas Tamar. That's Avshalom yalda achar shenizgaira. Now, after Macha converted, then David married her, and Avshalom was born, and Macha was a complete Jewess. Now, so first of all, I want to read the Balaturim by Yitzchak. It uses it when he first meets Rivka. It also says Vatihiloli Isha Vayehaveha. And here we use the same language, Vayehaveha Amnon. Hasam Haisa. 1 second.
the same lashon.
Step, I'm teaching a class now. Can you send me in text in the Teams who I have to see tomorrow, and then I can call you at 10 o'clock. Okay, thank you. So Hosamai Sa'ava Tli B'Davar Al Kain Batla. By Amnon, we know there's a famous Pirkei Avos that says Kol Ava, that's Tali B'Davar, it's not going to last. The example that's given is the love between Amnon and Tamar. There was no love because it was totally, as Barbara said, in lust. So when the lust goes away, the love goes away. But the example that Pirkei Avos gives of an Ava that's Einot Tluy B'Davar, that's David Yehona's son, where they had real friendship.
But you also have it with Rivka and Yitzhak.
So Hacha Einot Tluy B'Davar Al Kain Lo Batla. So even though it says Ahaveh in both places, Yitzchak and Rivka's love is an example of Ava that's Einot Tluy B'Davar, and that's why it persisted. Now, it says in Sanhedrin, Chaf Aleph, Amar Vid Amarav, Tamar, and Rashi says, Achos Avshalom bas Yifas Toar Haisa, Koidim Shnizgar B'Lev Sholem, Macha Imo Yadol David is Tamar. Another pshat is that she was born before she converted. V'Haisa Etzlo B'Toras Yifas Toar. Therefore, the relationship that David had with Macha then was Yifas Toar, and therefore she was a bas Yifas Toar. Later on, Tamar, in a discussion with Amnon, is going to say, "Well, David wouldn't. What do you need to live with me? David, my father, will give you to me as a wife." Now, how could she say that? You're not allowed to marry your sister. Elishmami, no. We see from there that she had not converted yet, and therefore, The Gemara says, Vlad Shivcha, Kusis Yisrael, Ein lo kurvas av. A Jewish man who lives with a non-Jewish woman, the child has no relationship to the father. It's only related to the mother. Says Masechta Yevomis Mishesh Leben Mikol Makom Pasifar Tar Haisav V'Zeh Derech Shel Forshim Al Adaf V'Hainu Dehutu LeDavid Lavola Yefas Tar BeMilchama V'Hayetzach LaHamti Nat Shetisgayer. He didn't have to wait until she converted. Shetasa Kol Advarim Skram before she's Fas Tar. Some say because he was a melech. I mean, why didn't he have to follow? So Chidushi Ran says, when can you live with your first Torah? So Rav says, be a Rishona Muteris Bab Bikavase. Rav, Machlokes Rav Amiroin, Rav and Rav Yochanan. Rav says that you can live once with the Yifas Torah before she converts. Aval Rav Yochanan Choylek Alav Yerushalmi. Shalohu Trabia Rishona Velo Biashnia La'achra Maisim Alalu. You have to go through the process where she grows her hair and grows her nails, and that. So David's approach was like Rav, that you're allowed to have one-time relationship even before you go through that process, and therefore Tamar is not the daughter of David. There's no connection to David, like we learned, because the daughter, if you live with a shivcha or a non-Jew, then you have no relationship to that daughter. Now Rashi holds that you're not allowed to live with the Yifas Torah until all the Maisim. So Rashi learns that she didn't convert Belev Shalem when she had Tamar. But later on, she converted with a full heart. That's how people learn within Rashi Shita, who say you can't live with her without going through that process. So the gear wasn't full. She didn't have her full heart in the gear. Later on, she had a full heart in the gear.
What's the cute?
Those were still the same mothers.
They have this right. They were so Amnon and Tamar were
Brother.
Avshalom's sister through the same mother, but not through the same father. Excuse me, Avshalom. So Amnon had no relationship to Tamar in essence, because it's not related to David, and Amnon is David's child. So Pasuk Beis. So that explains what this connection between Amnon, Avshalom, Tamar, and David is. Pasuk Beis.
Ernie, who is Tamar's father? I'm confused a little.
It's really David.
Tamar's father is David, but it's not considered in halacha that he has any connection to her.
Okay.
Like
because
the
mother didn't convert.
like non-Jews, if they have brothers and sisters and then they convert, technically they can marry each other because they're not related. Like later on they're Magayer, but since even though they were brother and sister, so we don't allow it for technical reasons, but la halacha, they're not related. So I'll read the halacha. Harold will remember this from Yevomis. Vlad Shivcha v'kusis miYisrael, the child of a Shivcha Knanis or a non-Jew, kusis miYisrael, ein lo korvus av, has no connection to the father. So David is the biological father, but he's not the halachic father. And Magda, later on, Amnon is going to try to convince Tamar to have relations with her, and with Tamar. Amnon is going to try to convince Tamar to have relations with him, and she's going to say, "What are you rushing there? My father will give you to me. Will give me to you as a wife. What do you have to rush now for?"
Well, typical. The woman is rational and the man is not.
I understand, but the Meforshim understand from there that it was technically possible for her to marry him. So we see that that David is not considered the halachic father. You're not allowed to marry your sister if you have the same father, right? The brother and the sister can't marry each other, la halacha. But later on, we'll see that that is a possibility in this relation. So that's further proof that Tamar is considered not related to David. She's only related to Avshalom through the same mother, through Macha, like we just explained. David had a relationship with Macha before she converted, but then after she converted, Avshalom was born from that relationship. So in essence, Avshalom and Amnon are also, Avshalom and Tamar are not quite even related either. She's called the sister because they have the same mother. Beis. Vayeter la Amnon lihis chalos, bavur Tamar achoso. Amnon is lovesick. That's the word of his, from the word holy. He becomes infatuated with Tamar. Ki besulahi. She is tsanua. She is in the home. Vaipale beinei Amnon lasos lo me'uma. And he wants to have relations with her, but she's locked away. She's like Rapunzel, right? Hello? Rapunzel, right? Where she's locked away, nobody can get at her. So that's the status. Amnon has fallen in love with someone that is beyond his reach. He doesn't know how to reach Tamar. Ula Amnon Reya. Amnon had a friend. What kind of friend is he? Ushmo Yonadav. His name was Yonadav ben Shima Achi David. He's Avshalom's cousin. David has a brother Shima. Yonadav is Shima's son. Avshalom is David's son, so they're first cousins. The Yonadav ish chacham me'od. So first of all, what do Chazal say? Mikan shlo yischaber adam im adam ra v'lo im adam rasha. Not with an evil person, wicked person. Shekain matzinu ba'amnon shnischaber im Yonadav v'yatzlo etzer ra. Yonadav is going to give Amnon very poor advice. Shenemar ula Amnon reya u'shmo Yonadav ben Shimachi David. V'Yonadav ish chacham me'od chacham l'reya. It means he's smart, but he's smart with chaindalach. It means he knows all the tricks. And don't be makarev. The avos Rav Nosson is the medrash I just brought this from. In fact, the Mechilta brings that he was called Yehonadav with a hay. After this whole incident, they took away the hay because he gave terrible advice. He became a Rasha.
Ernie, was this the procedure, like the Betulot, the virgins were hidden, or I guess weren't allowed to go out in the public, or they were?
Portions say that the concept of the Sula was that she's tsnua, babayis, and also she was modest. Ve'ena yotzis l'chutz.
In contrast to perhaps Dinah, that we know went out.
It was a yatsanis, right? Her nature was different. So, and the problem is this Vayipale b'nei Amnon, he doesn't know what he can do. He has this desire, and he can't fulfill the desire. Pasuk Dalet, Vayomer lo. So, and Yonadav says to Amnon, Madua takacha, Dal ben Amelach babokra. I see you depressed. That's what I think. Dal cholush v'kochush. He's lovesick. Halo tagidli. Well, tell me what's wrong. Vayomer lo Amnon et Tamar achot Avshalom achi ani ohev. I'm in love with Tamar, the sister of Amnon, the sister of Avshalom. By the way, we learn a halacha here. It says baboiker, baboiker. So the Shulchan Aruch says in Yoredeya, Shin Lamed Hey, Shebaboiker meikal achoyli min achoyla. In the morning, a sick person has some relief from his sickness. And this is what Yonadav noticed, because he noticed that even in the morning, this guy was sick. But by normal natural illness, people will get better. So the Shulchan Aruch says, "Ein mevakar b'choila b'gimel shos rishona shel yom." The first 3 hours of the day, you shouldn't visit a choila. And they should call choila mekel alav chalav b'boker. Sick people would feel better in the morning. V'lo yachush levakesh alav racham. So the guy who visits, what's the purpose of Bikur Cholim? So you should daven for the choila. But if you come to visit a choila in the morning, he's going to look healthy, and you won't daven as well. Then it says also, "V'lo begimel shos achrona shel yom." Don't visit the chol in the last 3 hours of the day. She'az machbir alav choli v'syash mevakesh alav racham. He'll be so sick that the person will sort of abandon hope of even praying for him. Someone who visits a choilin doesn't daven for him. You didn't kind the mitzvah bikr choilin. Okay, so you see, we've been learning halacha all along, from very few little words here and there in the Tanakh. Okay, pasuk hey. Vayomer lo Yonatav shchabel mishkavcha v'hitchal. You know what? He told him, fake your illness even more. And your father will hear about it. And your father David will hear and come and see you. And you'll ask David, Tavona Tamar achoti, please send Tamar, my sister. Since they all grew up together in the same house, that's how the Meforshim explain. That's why he calls her Achoisi here. Vatavreni lechem, and maybe she'll bake for me a nice pastry. Vastala a nice abirya, and Lemana she'erev achaltim, so I will see, and she will even feed me directly. This is all Yonatav's advice to him.
I'm not sure I understand I'm sorry. I'm not sure I understand the step with Tabrani Lechem, that she has to make it so he could see it. Why does she have, why can't she just bring, why is that important? The instructions are very detailed, so they must each have a significance. I don't know.
Well, the Malbim explains that it would, when you see somebody prepare food, it sort of increases your appetite.
Sit. Sit.
So
Drop it.
this is a ruse.
Drop it.
Meant that
Drop it.
That David HaMelech will go along with.
His dog.
Now, Yonadav doesn't go into detail what Amnon should do. He didn't give him a completely evil. He didn't advise her to rape his sister, even though technically he's permitted to live with her. But Amnon will understand what he should do. But he's laying the ground for this to happen. There are Meforshim, the Kliyok and the Kilas Yaakov say that Yonadav didn't give a bad eitzah, that he was not miskaven l'shem shamayim. And that's why here in this pasuk you notice there is a hey in his name, Yehonadav. There's an extra hey, and that's how they learned that it was l'shem shamayim. He never thought that Amnon would take the step of raping her, but he knew that Amnon desired her. But sometimes all you have to do is look upon the person. She'll come in the room, prepare food, and his yetzer will be satisfied with that. Now, there was also a thought that if David will agree to send Tamar to him, Amnon can reveal to her his heart, and maybe she'll agree to to be his wife. But that's probably not going to happen because we know that she's a Bas Yifas Toar, and the son of the king is not going to marry somebody with such poor yichus. So there are forebodings here. And again, the Musar Nevi'im brings the same shot. Shabbat David al Macha Ima Bizvan Melchama Kodim Shnis Gaira. They're all going according to the same shot that David lived with Macha before she converted. Lachein mutar haya la'Amnon lisauta. So Amnon could marry her. They she'eni miyachesed achrei aviyah. Ve'eni chashuva kavita shel David mishum devlada but his kachavim kamoisa. We went through the machloikis in Yerushalmi whether you're allowed to have bia rishona or not. Okay. So the pasuk vav, vayishkav Amnon vayischal. So Amnon plays along. He lied down on the bed. He acted sick. David HaMelech heard about it. So David comes to be mevakir chola. Vayomer Amnon HaMelech tavona tomar choisiu to laviv enai shtei levivos. Make me two latkes. Make me two pancakes. Dumplings, so I can eat directly from her hands. Apparently, maybe Tamar was known for being a good baker. Okay. Zion.
Why, if she was, like you said, Rapunzel locked up, why would you put her alone with a man, even if it's not her brother, it is her brother?
David HaMelech obviously thought it was innocent enough.
Right? David doesn't see any problem right now.
No problem.
This is David's son, Esti. You think he had a havamina? That you think he had a thought that the son was going to do something?
Did the princes and princesses, did they socialize? Were they were brothers and sisters of the king? So I assume they mingled. They
did. Chazal say that the reason why Amnon used the word achoti, even though it wasn't technically his sister, is because they all lived in the same palace, different homes there, and they were
children of David,
and they were all children of David. They lived in
That's the problem when you have too many wives and too many children. Many problems.
So David sends Tamar, go Beit Amnon Achicha to your brother, Vasilo Abiri, and make him the dish.
Ernie, can I just interrupt you a moment?
Please.
Did you say that the Me'am Lois says that the Sanhedrin, that all of this occurred before the Sanhedrin forbade a single woman from being alone, secluded with? It's before Chazal, Sanhedrin ruled that way, and obviously after David realized what happened, he instituted a more stringent rulings as well.
Yes, we're gonna learn about that. I don't know about this week. I think so. Right. So at this point, that answers I think Barbara's question or whatever. There was no isser at this point to be miyached with a panui, with a pnuya. There was no isser yet. Okay. There is an isser to be misyached with an erva.
Yeah.
With someone that is
right.
With someone that's prohibited to you, you can't have yichud. But at this point, they're not usher to each other, as we've explained.
Because they're not brother and sister.
And it's clear from the Meforshim, from the Mabed, David adayelo evin sha'anan cholos ava, v'hu shirotze kirvei sotamar l'malei tavoso. Lefichach lo hizer sheyivre miyada. David Melech was clueless at this point. He doesn't know that he's lovesick for her, and therefore that's how the Malbim sees. And this is part of the Isser, part of what happened here is that David himself, after it all happens, David is going to blame himself. This is part of the oynish that was given to him to Yigdal Tsaro. Shehu ba'atzma yagorn lezev lo chaza b'totzot. He didn't see carefully that something that could happen. And he was the one that sent her in the first place. So he's part of all the pain that eventually occurs. And that the Meforshim see that this was part of the punishment coming to David HaMelech. Pasuk Ches. Vatelech Tamar beit Amnon achia, v'hu shochet. So Tamar comes. He's lying in bed. V'tikachet habatzeik. She takes the dough, v'talosh v'tlavev leinav. She makes the levivot, v'tvashel the levivot, and she bakes them, cooks them with oil, like a donut. V'tikachet hamasreit, v'titzok lufanav.
The pan, took the pan. poured it out.
Vayima'en lechol. And she brings it to him, but he doesn't want to eat. So he says, I want all the servants, anyone's in the house, leave us. And the excuse he gave is that she's embarrassed to feed him by hand in front of other people. That's what the Me'am Loez says. And therefore, Lo shamuta kol shetzaka tamar keshi'ina to Amnon sheshamut tzakata. But either they didn't hear, eventually she's going to scream during the rape, so they're not going to hear. It's very interesting. The language here is very similar to somebody else who said, remove everyone from the room. I'm thinking about Yosef at
Yes.
Joseph, that before he reveals himself, right? He says, everyone should leave the room. Again, because remember, he cried too. Didn't want to hear them cry. So here, the same thing. Or they could hear the screams, but they didn't want to bust in on this is the prince. So, Pasuk Yud. Vayomer Amnon el Tamar. Avia bir yacheder, bring the dish into the room. Ve'avrabi, I want you to feed me. Vatikach Tamar tel vavot asher asta v'tavei Amnon achi achedra. And she comes into, I guess, the inner chamber where he was. V'tagesh elav lachol v'yichazik ba v'yomer la boy shechvi me'achoti. He grabs her and says, sleep with me. So the first question that some of the Meforshim asks, particularly the Kliyokar, if he's trying to seduce her, now why would he use the word "my sister"? How does that help in the seduction? It's just the opposite. If it's reminding her that even though there is no relation, she's certainly not going to agree if he's trying to seduce her. So the Kliyokar says, I'm going to read the Kliyokar. Kiven the yada she titzak b'kol gadol ma'od v'yelavuz. Amar la'achoti ad v'roy l'chasos kloni. You know what? You're going to want to scream, but don't scream because it's only going to cause you more embarrassment. Or the Kliyokar says, just lie down next to me, like as if a sister would lie down. It's not going to be a sexual thing. So Pasuk Yud Beis, Vatomer lo, Alachi altaneni. Absolutely not, my brother. Don't rape me. Ki lo yasaken b'Yisrael. Alta setan avalazot. This is not done in Jewish circles. Don't do this evil thing. Vani ana holichet cherpati. I'm going to be embarrassed by it. You'll be like a terrible person in like the other bums. I'll go speak to your father. He's not going to hold back from marrying me off to you. And again, this is the proof that there's not going to be a problem because she's a Bas Yifas Torah, like we explained, like all the Meforshim explained. By the way, the Rashi brings that the Eitzel Goyim Matzui Zela Anas is Absulos. By the non-Jews, they would rape Basulos. It's not something that was done in Yisrael. Now, the Malbim has three different answers that basically Tamar gave to Amnon here. Can be Israel. Regarding you wanna sleep with me, this is not al taset navalazot because it's not done among Jewish people. And by the way, there's a remez here to Shechem ben Chamor. Barbara mentioned Dinah. So when Shechem wants to come marry, so there also says the brothers, when they heard about it, they say, Ki nevala sab Yisrael lishkav bas Yaakov v'chein lo yeaseh. So Tamar knows her Torah well, and she's reminding Amnon that this is something that's not done among Yisrael. Rape. Then imitzad kvoda, regarding her honor, ani ana olechet cherpati. So you're going to cause me lack of kavod. V'imitzad kvodon, and regarding your kavod, you'll also reduce. You'll be like one of the buns. Now, there is an isser in the Torah. It says lo siyeh kedesha. A woman cannot be. That's a typical, like we use the word zonah for prostitute, but that's not in the Torah. It uses the word zonah for something else. When it says l'chalalav zonah et ela lo yikach, these are people that the Kohen can't marry. Any woman who undergoes any kind of bia be'isser is a halachic zonah. So technically, God forbid, a husband's wife gets raped. Shashiz neshasish. So because somebody foreign has slept with her, she's a halachic zona. Now, she can go back and live with her husband because if the husband is a Yisrael, because a Yisrael is not forbidden to marry a halachic zona. But if it's a Kohen's wife is raped, he can't live with her anymore because she's a halachic zona. So the word zona that's used in the Torah does not refer to a woman who's mufkeres, to a woman who sleeps with anybody. That kind of person is a kadesha, somebody who hangs out on corners and propositions men. Now, is it when so the Meforshim discuss when she says, don't do this nevala, is having relations just with a Jewish girl, a panuya, bol apnuya, does that make her a kadesha? So the Kesef Mishnah in the Rambam, the Kesef Mishnah was Rav Yosef Karo, who was the main commentator on the Rambam. He brings the Rabbi Lozer Beno Shel Rambam. The Ma'anes is a psula, somebody who rapes a psula. The Hisrubo, Mishum Alav da Loti Kedesha Loike. So it's a das yachid that if someone gave a guy a warning, don't rape this basula. And because there's a lav of lo siyeh kedesha, he gets malchus. And that's what that explanation explains why she said you're going to commit a lav. But the Ravid says she'en kedesha ela mezumenes umufkeres l'chol adam. The kedesha is a prostitute as we would understand it. She's available and she's hefker to any man. However, habo ala pnuya, shelo l'shem ishus oiver ba'aseh. A single Jewish man who has relations with a single Jewish girl, not for the purpose of getting married, he's over in an asay. The Rachmana Amar ki ikach ish isha uba'ala. It says if a man wants to take a wife and live with her, it has to do be'ishus. It has to do with chuppah v'kiddushin. That's what she meant when she says kilo yasakem b'Yisrael. The dafka Yisrael nitztabu mitzvahs kiddushin. That's how people explain what she meant by the Nevalah. The Ralbag says that shelo yasakem b'Yisrael avol isha derech znus im lo yeh derech ishus. If the relation is not for the purposes of marriage, but just for znus, it's you violated this concept. Okay.
Ernie, there's one more example of the same Lashon al Tases and Nevala Hazos by the in Shoftim Pelegesh Begiva. The same words, the same Lashon.
Okay. And certainly we know that that was a very evil thing as well. So Pasuk Yudalit. V'lo aval lishma bekola. He didn't listen. Vaychazak mimena vayanen, he raped her. Vayishkavosa. Now Rashi says, when it says in Shechem, Vayarota, Shechem ben Chamor, Nesi Aretz, Vayikachota, Vayishkavota, Vayaneh. It seems like it's a double language. Vayaneh is rape, Vayishkavosa is rape. Perish Rashi, Vayishkavota kedarka, Vayaneh shelo kedarka. That means it was the standard way. Kedarka is vaginal relation. Vayaneh is the other orifice. Shelo kedarka. So he raped her both ways. And the Malbim says, Tchila inaota shelo kedarka. First it was anal. And therefore, so she would not lose her virginity. So initially, he wanted to keep her as a basula. And maybe that would take care of his Yetzer Hara. Says the Malbim, Kishlo shakat rucho shachavota kedarka. Bekach kosuva al-shich. A terrible event. I think now that we've gotten to this, I guess, pasuk, the story, we've reached a climax. There's going to be a denouement, like in a regular, and we're gonna see what the result of this rape, what happens as a result of this rape. We'll learn it next week. Any comments, questions, issues, in terms of anything we learned tonight?
Never learned this in school, did we?
Did they skip over this when we learned?
What do you think?
Never learned this ever.
Okay.
Okay. Shavua Tov.
Kitabov, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Shavua Tov. Thank you.
Good work.
Shabbat tov.
What's up, everybody?
Everybody mentioned Dina, that it was the